Always safe where you are, but safe only gets you so far. What if you look your fears right in the eye? Say you'll see them another time. What if for once you can find a piece of you that you've been hiding? You've been hiding. What if you chase your heart out to the edge? Rewrite your stars and be brave instead. What if you jump and the falling feels a little like you're flying, like you're flying? Oh my darling, if you try, you just might kiss the sky.
Chapter 3. Spark that starts a fire. Hiccup, you have done some really questionable things, but this really tops it all. Of all the boneheaded, Thor-forsaken, Astrid yelled, gesturing wildly. Her blue eyes flashed dangerously. Hiccup, he is our enemy. Are you forgetting the amount of pain he has brought to our dragons, to our village? Fishwick spoke. His voice wavered a bit in confusion and hurt. I am very aware, Fishlegs. I know what he's done. Hiccup groaned, waving his hand towards his friend in acknowledgement. Fishwick narrowed his eyes as he continued putting away his utensils, turning his head towards Hiccup. Then why go through all this trouble to save him? Hiccup really wished people would stop asking him such hard questions, especially when he had no clue himself. He curled up tighter into a ball, metal foot lightly shaking as he stared down at the wooden floor. Hiccup, Astrid said, stressing her tone as she glared down at him with her piercing eyes. He really wished he could be alone right now. It was days like this that made him regret not running away with Toothless when he could have, honestly. The doorway creaked. Unwelcome listeners made themselves known as they stormed into the room, hopping over the irritated dragon. Hiccup felt his headache sharpen. Yeah, the threat of death hanging over our heads every second is exactly what I want. Bravo, Hiccup! Great call! Snoutwell yelled as he entered, his hands on his hips as he narrowed his eyes at Hiccup, not hesitating to join the scrutinizing Hiccup for acting impulsively club, as he always did. I, for one, am on board. I'm sure the man will lighten up the place. We could use a new coat of red in our hut. Toughnut yelled, banging his head against his sister's helmet with a loud clang. Yeah, and we could use more entertainment for the boar pit. Roughneck echoed her brother's sentiment. Yeah, I'm sure they were fine with the whole archipelago going up in smoke. And at the very least they wouldn't fight him on this. One less problem here, he supposed. I like how your mind works, sister. The twins giggled, slamming their helmets together with glee. Hiccup banged his head lightly against the wall. Any more of this, and he would have to drink the willow bark tea Fishwick set out for Viggo just to survive the pain of the afternoon. Hiccup's arm ached at that moment, as if the thought was enough for it to remind him that he was still injured. He winced slightly as he shifted. Astrid seemed to have caught on to the movement immediately, her eyes narrowing at his arm as he stopped his hand from covering the wound. Quiet! All of you! This isn't getting us anywhere! Astrid yelled. Hiccup wanted to kiss her just for that, feeling the ache of their stares wane as she interrupted them. They all quitted, looking at Hiccup and Astrid with confusion. Astrid nodded at the new silence before looking at Hiccup, who was currently trying to melt into the floorboards. You're hurt, she said. Hiccup grimaced, but nodded. Yeah, arrow nicked me, he mumbled. Fishwick quickly turned and started rummaging through his medical materials once more, movements hasty. Hiccup nodded thankfully to the Viking as Astrid leaned close to him, grabbing his arm. Let me see, Astrid said. Hiccup let her move his arm, showing the bloody, torn cloth behind it. She let out a small breath of air at the sight, realizing it wasn't as bad as it could be, before looking at Hiccup. Fishwick came back, kneeling at his side with the bandages. Astrid refused to break eye contact with him, eyes serious and narrowed. Hiccup swallowed at the sharp look. Hiccup, this is insane, but I'm going to trust for a moment that you haven't lost your mind. Please, just tell us what happened. Hiccup took a deep breath before standing and leading the group out of the hut, trying to give Viggo at least a semi-quiet environment. As he made his way to their main hut, he tried his best to straighten his frantic thoughts into a semi-coherent stream. Yeah, well, I can't exactly prove that I haven't, but here goes. Wow. Yep. Everyone was convened at their main hut, still reeling from their leader's story. Nobody said anything for a moment, unsure of how to react. Hiccup could relate. He wiggled in his seat slightly, uncomfortable. The last day and a half were nearly unreal. Hiccup felt as though his entire world shifted on its axis. In the span of a sun cycle, his enemy tried to ally himself with their cause and tear down their enemies to the point where he would die for their leader. Hiccup tried to see every angle, how Viggo could possibly have some secret plan, but came up short. He felt the gaze of everyone on him, boring into his very soul, as if they could find the answers to the predicament Hiccup's impulsive decisions landed them in by simply staring hard enough. Why would he try and sacrifice himself to save you? Fishwick chimed, cutting through the tense silence. I wish I knew. Hiccup shook his head, unable to answer. And he trained a squirrel? Yep. Fishwick stopped, looking at the floorboards. Maybe he's possessed, Roughnut shouted, throwing her hands in the air. Sure. Hiccup sent them a look. The twins were being helpful, as usual. Good theory, sister. I propose we set him ablaze to release the spirit. Grab the nightmare gel. Hiccup's eyes widened. With a surprising amount of panic in his chest, he leapt to his feet, abandoning the barrel he was sitting on. Oh no, we are not doing that. The twins pouted. Buzzkill. Astrid snorted. Snout threw his hands in the air, exasperated. No, I'm sure he knew Hiccup was gullible and used our illustrious leader to get on the edge and steal our dragons. We all know Hiccup has no backbone. Hiccup took offense to this statement, but he couldn't deny that the same thought hadn't crossed his mind multiple times. Astrid glared at Snout, who stepped down a bit, leaning forcefully against the wall with an annoyed huff. At his surrender, Astrid turned to look at her betrothed. I hate to say it, but Snout has a point, in a way. It was probably all just some plot to get you to let your guard down. She grabbed his shoulder with a steady hand. Hiccup calmed at the strong presence next to him. He looked at her, grateful and hesitant. I get that, but do you really think he took arrows in the back to get to me? Astrid, I just don't see any world where that would go in his favor. Hiccup, the man is insane. But he's not stupid. None of this makes any sense. What point would dying make? He probably knew another way out. He's also a master of manipulation. Astrid's eyes grew softer as her voice lowered, firm but understanding. Hiccup let out a small sigh. Yeah, maybe you're right. I couldn't leave him there to die, Astrid. Especially not like that. He doesn't deserve that kind of death. Astrid narrowed her eyes. Hiccup knew that expression well. She wouldn't back down from this. Yeah, you could have. It's not like it would be hard. Roughnut cheered from the other side of the room. Hiccup rolled his eyes. Thanks, Ruff. That's not what I meant. Anytime, Hick. Hiccup stared at his teammate with a blank expression. Well, we can't change what happened. What do you think we should do? Astrid said, bringing his attention back to her. I think, for now, we should keep him here while he recovers. Keep a close watch. Anything suspicious, and we send him to Outcast Island. If he really has changed like he wants us to believe, then maybe this might be a good thing. And at least he hoped so. Now that he was out of danger, the doubt started creeping into him worse and worse every moment. This could be a ploy, but what if it wasn't? He couldn't throw away the possibility, no matter how small it may be. I don't know, Hiccup. He's too dangerous. Astrid disagreed, blonde hair whipping slightly into her face as she shook her head. I think we should get rid of him as soon as we can. Who knows what damage he could bring to us? Hiccup looked to the ground for a moment, considering. Astrid could see the clear hesitation written on his face. She knew him too well, could see through his cold expression. She ducked her head further, forcing him to meet her eyes. She ran a hand on his, comforting him. I know what you're thinking. I see it in your eyes. I get it, but Hiccup, people like him? Look, I know you want to see the good in everyone, but some people are just evil. People like Viggo Grimborn don't change. First chance we get, we should get him far, far away from the edge. So far away that he can't hurt you again. Hiccup let out a shuddering breath. He didn't like that option, leaving the man to die out there. Viggo did try to save him. He didn't deserve such a dishonorable death. I don't know, Astrid. He shook his head. Let's at least let him stay until he isn't on death's door, okay? Astrid considered a moment. Okay. But we need to get him far away from us when that time comes. Who knows what damage he could bring? Hiccup stared into her resolute eyes, then slowly nodded. He sighed. He saw the logic in her statement. People like Viggo are out for themselves, and he felt like he was being childish for ever considering the contrary. Hiccup slowly stood, shaking the pins and needles from his body as he did so. The team followed his lead, heading for the entrance. Astrid stopped him for a moment, hand on his shoulder before leaving a small peck on his cheek, fluttering her eyelashes slightly as she looked at him. I know you will make the right choice, Hiccup. He will only hurt us. And with that, she walked away into the cold night air. Hiccup let out a breath, watching it freeze in the chilled air. She was right. Still, even as he thought that, he felt something in his heart cry out that he was wrong, and that Viggo was different. He knows better, but he couldn't kill that hope in his heart, even when his head screamed, even when it was barely a seed. Hiccup walked back to his hut, pulled up a chair to Viggo's bedside, and waited. He focused deeply on the man's features, taking in the pale skin, even paler on the twisted flesh of his burns. The man's face was tilted towards him, half buried in the soft cotton pillow at an odd angle. His dark hair fell softly against the pillow, always elegant despite the current grim circumstances. He always hated that about the man, how he was so flawless, even scarred. His face was scrunched up in pain. His dark eyebrow stood starkly against his skin, as did his well-maintained facial hair. It was odd, he thought. The man almost looked normal, sleeping like this. Almost human. The man's eyes fluttered lightly against his cheeks, as if the man was dreaming. He guessed even monsters like him dreamed, didn't they? It was surreal, seeing him this close, brow relaxed and eyes closed. So exposed, so innocent looking. Hiccup knew he could never look so serene. Viggo seemed like such an untouchable god among men. Now he seemed human. That did something to Hiccup, clicking something into place. This man could die at any moment. This man's life was as fragile as their own. He could take advantage of the man's weakness, ensure that the archipelago would not have to face the man's tyranny ever again. Before, he thought of that. Killing Viggo just to make it all stop, the nightmares of death in his village, the war, even when he hated killing. But now, thought made him feel sick, because Viggo was more than a madman, more than a tyrannical god. He was human, and humans could change. A couple of days passed, Hiccup tending to his wounds, watching him, looking at his skin as it gained color, studying his eyes as he hoped they would open. It only had to be a matter of time. He never left the man's side. His dragon was getting antsy, but Hiccup couldn't leave now. Hiccup stayed, waiting for the hunter to wake. Finally, he watched as Viggo's eyes flickered for a moment, then opened. The first thought that crossed Viggo's mind was that he never thought Valhalla could be so painful. His back was aflame, like changeling acid was slathered across it, painfully eating away at his flesh. The second was that the Valkyries obviously didn't quite take him up yet. One stood before him, bathed in an ethereal glow. Beautiful, heavenly, his glorious muse, his dear Hiccup. He did think, for a moment, that the face of his supposed enemy greeting him was the greatest gift Valhalla could ever bestow him with. When he said as much, the Valkyrie stepped away, pink flesh covering his features. Odd. As he thought it, he realized it was peculiar that a male Valkyrie stood before him. He thought all of them were female. Perhaps they made an exception and sent him one with the face of his infatuation. And what a wonderful exception it was. The Valkyrie walked farther from his reach. Viggo keened as the presence abandoned his side, longing for the winged deliverer. He felt his eyelids grow heavier and heavier over his blurred vision. He never realized Valhalla could be this cruel, to gift him such a gift, then tear him away once again. As the world fizzled away, thoughts of emerald eyes and auburn hair faded with it. Viggo was enveloped with darkness once more. Hiccup slipped into the cool night air, hoping to escape the embarrassment of that encounter. His heart fluttered as he breathed in the crisp air, his quick breaths accompanied by small puffs of white. Out of all the things he expected from Viggo, poetic rhapsodizing of his beauty and how he was a gift from Odin's very halls was not something that ever crossed his mind. Just, what? How hurt was this guy? He winced. The flesh that slightly faded came back with full force, leaving his body heated. The earlier hatred he harbored fell to the wayside for the moment, thrown by the jarring experience. He never really thought too much of the other's emotions for him besides the obvious facade of twisted affection. Never really considered the man felt anything more than contempt mixed with some morbid fascination as he felt for him. He wasn't blind. He knew the man had an odd obsession with him, as Hiccup did for Viggo, but he never really thought any further than that. He felt slightly hysterical. As a Hiccup, he never experienced such a thing as that. He knew nobody has, or ever will, think he is physically desirable in any way. It was a rule. He couldn't believe anyone would break that rule. This was clearly all because Viggo was hurt. But a day ago, he would have sworn Viggo wasn't capable of any emotions other than greed. Now Hiccup felt the slight urge to lean off his balcony and take a dive to the rocky waters below, then try to decipher this enigma of a man. This was all too confusing. Yet he yearned to know more. There was no chance the words were real. Not after all he's put the man through. Hiccup did feel a bit of remorse on that front, but not much. The man did kill and sell dragons for a profit after all. He couldn't forget that fact. He should remember who the man really was. He's been told so many times before, people like that don't change. People like that don't feel. Pain makes people act odd. He knew that. He tried brushing the encounter off. Yes, he was sure the man didn't like him that way. His heart fluttered at the thought, even if it was insane, he would never. He furrowed his brow and made his way down the hill, whistling for his dragon. He needed to take a quick flight. He had a lot to think about. Hopefully Viggo will be more coherent the next time he wakes up. He remembered Astrid's words, and steeled himself for the inevitable backstabbing. He'll be ready for it if that's the case. He would be wary for now, and prepare for the worst. He'll figure out what the man's endgame was to their little misadventure, and prepare for the worst. He shook his head, the man's tender words and expression forcefully pushed from his mind. He wanted to hope that Astrid was right. She had to be. He wouldn't know what to do if she wasn't. If Viggo was actually telling the truth.
Don't sit around for